Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd. Today we are going to discuss another scholar, one of the scholars of Islamic Economic Thought. This is one of the great scholar because this scholar has done numerous work, and this scholar is a philosopher, and then what else you can say? He has many dimensions. You know, he's been in medicine, he's been in chemistry, physics, astronomy, cosmology. In fact, even his works in literature, theology, history, and also jurisprudence. This scholar used to be called Fakhruddin, the pride of our religion, and he was given the name also Shaykh al-Islam, the great scholar of Islam. Also, he was given the name of Sultan al-Mutakallimin, the Sultan of theologians, by the way. So this is where we are going to talk about Imam Fakhruddin Razi today. He has done tremendous work, especially in tafsir. Is by the name of Tafsir al-Kabir. If you look into that book, you will be surprised to see, because for one verse, one ayah, he is giving commentary like no one has done before. That's why it is called Kabir. One of the biggest. This is actually so far the biggest tafsir has ever written. It is in actually 30 volumes, 30 over volumes. So his name is Abu Abdullah Abu al-Fadl Muhammad ibn Umar al-Razi. Al-Razi is a family name. He was given the title Hujjatul Islam and Shaykh al-Islam. He was born in Ar-Rai, the name of Rai Jibal. He is from south of Tehran, which is situated right now in somewhere in Iran, of course. His father, he was born in Persia, but in that time, Persian country, but his origin actually is from Arab. His father, Ziauddin Umar, people call him Khatib, right? He used to be known by the name of Ibn Khatib. Of course, he has, Fakhruddin Razi was masters in so many dimensions, as I told you earlier: philosophy, ilm al-kalam, and other Islamic sciences. Like I told you, he was very good in also in Arabic as well as in Persia. Many scholars attended his courses from far. In fact, himself is influenced by the work of al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, and Imam al-Ghazali, and also Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi, the another scholar from Razi. In fact, he extends where Imam al-Ghazali stops in many philosophical aspects. His death was something, he was poisoned by a group of people because they wrongfully accused him. He died in 1149 after Hijri. So actually, the most important thing that I would like to give you today is actually, so far we learn so many things about so many scholars, about so many works. Yeah. So what is so special about Fakhruddin Razi, right? Which we didn't see in Ibn Hazm, or which we didn't see in al-Ghazali, or in Abu Yusuf, or Abu Ubaid. So far we discuss also at-Tartushi, right? So his speciality with regard to economic thought. I think for that we need to pick a book that was written by him by the name of Kitab al-Nafs al-ruh wa sharh quwahuma. I think this is amazing book. Um, so I think this is the book actually we are going to discuss for this entire session, because he is going to talk about the economic perspective of a soul and also nafs. Yeah, so nafs and ruh, the body and the soul, and then he is going to talk about how you are supposed to make it strong, how you are supposed to feed it, and the feeding, exactly how much, what is the measurement of feeding your body and feeding your soul. See that the work itself, the name itself, something giving you the economic perspective, but there is a caution, there is a warning, because when you take too much medicine, when you take too much, anything that you take too much eating, too much sleeping, too much drinking, too much entertainment, too much talking to people, too much playing around, so these are the things, because when there is no measurement, everything going to become complicated, and it's going to hurt you in a way. It's not only hurting yourself by your action, by your doing the excessive manner. By doing, you are actually hurting people, hurting your surrounding, hurting your family, your neighbors. Yeah, so I think that is what the speciality of Imam Fakhruddin Razi with regard to this book. As I told you, this this scholar, mashallah, he has done tremendous work. It is actually one of his small contribution that he is actually talking about this, how you feed your body and your soul, from where we actually getting his economic perspective, which actually I'm thinking, which is exclusively needed for every single Islamic economist. Because our economy is based on that moral, that that truth of our religion. So I think in this way, in order to understand completely, we should understand the basic theoretical framework, theoretical background. That is what I think he is actually discussing in his book. But other than his book that we are going to talk, if you really need to know about his background, I think I can give you some of his background. Um, he was, as I told you, he was the pioneer, of so many Islamic sciences. As I told you, there are so many varieties of knowledge that he learned, and he has done work. And but the most important thing, when you open his Tafsir al-Kabir, which is the most important and also the largest compilation ever made, you will be seeing his dimension as a astronomer, as a literate, as a theologist, as a philosophist. Yeah, so you as a historian, so you will be seeing his manifestation in his book, in his writing. Let me just give you an example of how his astronomy, the cosmology that he was having. He was a rejecter of a geocentric model. Just a geocentric model is actually introduced by Aristotle. I think we learned about him last time when we were starting these courses. So he was saying that he was having the notion of a single universe, single universe revolving around a single world, right? There is a single universe, and then Earth is in the center of the world, and then the whole universe is actually revolving around this single world. So, so that was the idea of Aristotle. Later, in fact, even Ibn Sina also was having the same thought. But himself, Fakhruddin Razi, he rejected that. And he brought, I think, by far, I think he is the first one, I think. He's the first one who introduced the word multiverse. We were talking about universe, right? Because uni is one, universe, one universe. But he talked about multiverse. That is the amazing idea, because today it is quite easy to see that there is not one universe, because what we are observing, whether it is the sun, moon, or all these planets, that so far we have 9 planets, all these actually we call it a galaxy, we call it a universe, right? Universe. He says, today we found it, we are happy to see it, but he told thousand, almost 900 years ago. Just imagine, almost 900 years ago, this scholar said there is no one universe, and he brought. This is amazing, from where he got this idea. This is actually every one of us should know, because every one of us, we already know the source, we already know the evidence, but we didn't realize the evidence until today. I'm telling you, every single Muslim already has the evidence that there is a multiverse. What is the first verse of Surah Al-Fatiha? Alhamdu lillahi Rabbil Alameen. He is the God of what? Rabb, the Lord of Al-Alameen. So how do you translate the word Al-Alameen? If you translate the word universe, in Arabic, the word Al-Alam is a singular, which is universe. Al-Alam, when you convert into plural, it become Al-Alameen, like Muslim, Muslimin, Mu'min, singular, Mu'minin, plural, right? Salih, singular, Salihin, plural. So, Rabbul Alameen, we need to say multiverse. So he start from there, and then he argue. There is a book of his book, Mabahis al-Mashriqiyya. In this book, it's Eastern Studies in Metaphysics and Physics. He talks about al-Ilahiyya wa tabi'iyya. Al-Ilahiyya is actually metaphysics, and then tabi'iyya is actually physics. He also has another book called Matalib al-Aliyah. Matalib, it's actually higher issues. Matalib al-Aliyah. So these are the books. He amazingly, mashallah, he talk about all these ideas, and the concept, as I told you, the concept of the conceptions of physics, especially the multiple universes. So in fact, he rejected Aristotelian and Avicennian notions on this. He was more into Ash'ari school of Islamic theology. He of course, his area actually was Kalam. So remember, all these things, this kind of theological thought, it should come from the Kalam. Kalam is actually theology. Because when you talk about unseen, for example, it is called Mafatih al-Ghaib. In fact, he wrote his tafsir, which you and me call Tafsir al-Kabir. But in fact, he didn't name it Tafsir al-Kabir. We are the people who named it Tafsir al-Kabir because he's the largest tafsir. But he named his book as Mafatih al-Ghaib, keys to the unseen. So now you see all these mutakallimin, if you know the meaning of mutakallimin, the people who talk about kalam. Kalam is actually what? The existence of God, the existence of, the universes, the heaven and earth, and then talk about the ghaibi. Ghaibi means the unseen things. So when they go through the discussion and then they have to talk about some of the idea that supporting our Iman and Islam, some of the idea that not supporting our Iman and Islam. So this is how Imam Ghazali talks about it. They bring the falsafa, philosophy in it, and then subhanallah. So this is what his genre. His genre is actually what? Philosophy and Sufism and also theology. And from there he looks everything in the same way. You got it? He looks everything in the reality. For example, he will be talking what will happen during the akhirah, whether this world, this universe is going to be destroyed completely, or is it going to be showing to you as destroyed. What do you mean by destroy? What I mean that you have a phone and then you destroyed it. If you destroy your own phone, does it lost the space, or does it convert into a different position, different figure? What exactly happening? Right? You understand my point? So this is what actually the real meaning of destruction. What exactly? Is it like converting into something? Or is it like totally going out of the space? Or is it going to be unseen that you cannot see anymore? Right? So when I say destruction, then what exactly the definition of destruction? Right? So now, how do you compare the existence of Allah and the existence of the creation? What are the differences between not having the creations and having the creator? See, there's so many angles of discussions, mashallah, he is actually having it. So now when it comes to that kind of material perspective, you understand? Because kullu shayfan, because every single thing is actually going to be destroyed.
Sir,
yes, please go ahead.
so a few people have been trying to enter the call, but they can't enter.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Right, all right. Okay, I hope now. Yeah. All right. Thank you for the attention. Thank you. All right. So I was saying, that is what actually Imam Fakhruddin Razi. He thinks whatever we call it material, whatever we call it material, he thinks that that material has a different perspective. It is not as a material you see. It is something that you are using, you are having it so that you can actually manifest in a different figure of your life, different place in your life. And the journey of becoming from something to something else, that journey is very important, because the destination where you reach is all the time the destination where you are going to reach is how is going to be decided whether you are a good person or the bad person in the perspective of Allah, right? So I think this is what actually the background of his work, background of Imam Fakhruddin Razi. So now if you look into the slides one by one, you will be, it is not actually as straight as, other scholars are talking. Most of the time when we talk about economics, it's actually the economic sciences. It's actually very easy to understand, in a way, because it talks about the reality. It talks about the number. It talks about what you see. Right? But Fakhruddin Razi, when he talk about, he talks differently. For example, I was going through his book, subhanallah. So his book, I was having this Arabic version of his book. The first, there is a two part of his book, Kitab al-Nafs al-ruh sharh quwahuma. It is actually considered one of the book written in al-Akhlaq, book of ethics. There's a two divisions in his book. The first part of the book, it talks about in general manner of book of ethics, where he talk about there are 4 types of creation. The first type is الذي له عقل وحكمة وليس له طبيعة ولا شهوة. The one who has intellect and wisdom, but they don't have the nature and the desire. Who are they? They are the angels. The second type, الذي ليس له عقل ولا حكمة وله طبيعة وشهوة. The one, it has no intellect, no wisdom, but it has a nature, it has a desire. Who are they? Those are the animals that we see. Number 3, الذي ليس له عقل ولا حكمة ولا طبيعة ولا شهوة. It has nothing, no intellect, no wisdom, no nature, no there is no nature in the meaning of moving around, right? There is no movement around. There is no shahwa, there is no desire. Who are they? They are the mountains, the non-living things, what we call it today, the non-living things. It could be the plants, the trees, the forest, the mountains, the water, those so many things. Then finally, al-Rabi', the fourth one, وهو الذي يكون له عقل وحكمة ويكون له طبيعة وشهوة. The person that has every single thing. He has a wisdom, he has a intellect, he has a moving nature, he also has a shahwa, desire. That is who? The human being, and also jinn. And the human being is so this is how he starts his book. He talks about all related to these attributes of human being. Then in the second section of his book, that is actually exactly what we are going to talk about in this the second part of the book, which he talks about how do you make your shahwa, your desire, in a right way. Because when it comes to shahwa, we all have the desire to eat, desire to drink, desire to earn money, desire to spend money, right? Desire to buy something, desire to destroy something else. So these are the desires that he is going to talk about in completely in this book section number 2. And the summary of those things, actually what he put it in this slide. Okay. Major works. Yeah, he has so many works. Like I told you, he has Quran, Tafsir. According to one scholar, he has 68 books that he wrote. According to another scholar, he wrote 93 books, right? And among the book completed, book Kitab al-Nafs al-ruh sharh quwahuma will be the focus of our initial exploration into the economic worldview of al-Razi. Before I go to this book, let me tell you, most of his work, right? Most of his work still not completely explored. You see, this is only a part of his book that actually we are talking about. But if you go through for each and every, because you know those days the discipline of economics was not there. So when they talk about these things, it's always everywhere, scattered around. So if you open any words that relate to economic matters, and then if you open his tafsir al-Kabir, and you see his tafsir, then you will be seeing more, right? He wrote some other book. So wherever he talk about this wealth, the desire of a man, right? He talks about the economic related matters. So most of his work is not being explored. Only this book is available right now with us, right? Okay. The first one, yes, as I told you, the Kitab is divided into two parts, encompassing 12 chapters, while second part of 10 chapters deals with the issue of what concern appetites, right? Appetitions. Okay, the first one is, of course, the wealth. Of course, he talks about hubul mal. So now he talks about Islam's position to spending of wealth. It can be seen in two perspectives, right? One is Islam enjoins the seeking and spending of wealth. The other way, because you can see Sharia is telling you to seek and spend the wealth. You will see so many Quranic verses talks about seek and spend wealth. But you will be seeing another set of Quranic verses and hadith talks about your wealth can be the distraction. Like for example, al-malu wal-banunu wal-banuna zinatul hayatid dunya. Al-malu wal-banuna fitnatun. Al-malu fitnatun. Right? So you can see so many other verses talks about how this mal and your family and your wealth could become a distraction, so that you follow that and then you become into something, and then you forget Allah, and then you forget your original objectives of living. So Allah talks about the test and everything. So you will be seeing, of course, this is how it starts. There will be both always Quran and Hadith always talks about. So you need to choose the middle way. It's all about balancing. How you do the balancing. You give such amount of time for this to earn something, to spend something. You should be giving the same, not it could be more, but cannot be less than that. You cannot give less time for your akhirah and more time for your dunya. You should know how you make your dunya for the sake of akhirah, right? All right, so he's talk about spending our wealth for the attainment of spiritual bliss. Most of the time, as I told you, his focus is actually spiritual bliss because he's a theologist, cosmologist. So he sees the material world in that way. Spending of wealth, benefit for others, self-benefit, right? If it's self-benefit, it's a food, clothing, dwelling, marriage. If spending for benefiting for others, then you spend something but you don't receive any gain, like a sadaqah and hiba. Spending with the hope to secure some gains, right? Worldly gains, hereafter gains. Are you spending money to the poor people? Is it like you want to spend the money and then you want to put your name outside, and then you want to mention in your CV, I went to this place, I spent this amount of money, and this is my resume that I'm writing it? Is it for the sake of world material that I'm spending and then I'm showing and then I'm deducting the taxes? I am spending it because I want the invoice so that I can show my invoice to the government so that I can deduct the taxes. So what is the purpose? right? You understand my point? Most of the time now, the charity is being given, but many Quranic verses also talks about it. We spend the money that we don't use it. What I mean by that, we spend the money to the poor people, the money that we don't want to spend for ourselves. We hate that income, and then we spend that money to somebody. We should be the person who spend to the poor people the money that we love. Remember the Quranic verse, لن تنالوا لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون. What does it mean? You won't be getting, you will see people are taking your money and they are using it, but you will not get the benefit. You will not uh, get the reward until you spend the money that you like. What Prophet said? Prophet said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. Whatever you like for yourself, whatever you like for yourself, you share that thing to your brother. Do not share to your brother, do not share to your sister, your friend that you don't like. Okay, I want this. I bought this. Two of them came two pieces in two pieces. One thing, but came additional one thing, but I didn't like that color, so I want to give it to you. That is actually not the hadith. The hadith says you like this color, you gave that color to somebody. The one you like, you give it to somebody. The one you don't like, you don't give it to somebody. Right? So this is what happened. The money, we think that it's the money of riba from the bank, or the money that comes from different source of business, whether it is prohibited sale, or maybe like from alcohol, some other things, and then we think, okay, that money should be given as a charity. No, the money that we should give the charity is the money should be that we like, the halal money that we like, the halal al-tayyiban. That kind of commodities, that kind of money should be spent to the poor people. Then only you will be getting hereafter gains. So there are hereafter gains, there are worldly gains. How wealth can be a source of misery? He talks about over-indulgence or overspending can cause three things. It can cause one, somebody's wealth to become scarcer, somebody's remembrance of Allah will decrease because of the misery. Right? One possibly turn to unlawful earning to replenish one's depleting wealth. So this is all going to happen if there is a if the wealth can become the source of misery. And then he talks about wealth, its insatiable demand, and its relationship with one's wants and needs. So here he talks about wants, he talks about needs. You must know, we used to tell to our children, you will get what you need, but you will not get what you want, right? So there's a difference between want and need, right? So this is where Sheikh Fakhruddin Razi gives two analogy. He talks about greed, the love of collecting and obtaining wealth, and he talks about the stinginess, parsimony. The stinginess is linked to the love of keeping wealth, because when you start hoarding, keeping the money, then you become it's a kind of miserliness, which is actually stinginess. There are two possible effects may rise. The first one is when someone have a love of wealth, you see how deep he is going. And look at these last 2 points. Love for wealth can cause the removal of wants. Love for substantial wealth reflected by the amount of wealth. You see, he talks about very deep. He says that when someone has a wealth, when someone has a love for wealth, and he loved it too much, what will happen is actually you are actually touching, you are actually disturbing somebody's need. Okay, I can give you an example. There is a You already have your shoe, and you are walking with your shoe, and suddenly you are in the market and you saw there is a shoe which you wanted to buy last time but you didn't get it, right? You didn't get it which you wanted to buy. Sorry, there's a call, please, 1 minute. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, madam, in between the class. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm getting back to you. Okay. I was giving the example, sometimes you have already your shoe or your slipper, and then you are in the market and you wanted to buy one. Suddenly you saw it, which you wanted to buy last time, right? You already have it. It's an extra. You have the love to buy. You go and you buy it, and then that shoe has gone. Now there is a guy coming without shoe, walking in that market. He needs the shoe, and he goes there and he cannot find the shoe. So now the difference between wants and needs. This guy needed that shoe because he has no shoe, and you already have the shoe and you are buying an extra shoe. So see how deep he is going. This love for wealth can cause the removal of wants. So you just need to read this 2-3 times to understand his point. I can talk about it, but I'm afraid we don't have enough time to go through all this. But you need to sit down and read this one by one. If you don't understand for the first time, read 2-3-4 times, then you will understand. Yeah. Theoretical exposition on parsimony or hoarding and overindulgence and ostentatious ones. Imam Razi recommends some of the ideas. He says that if you follow these actions, list of actions he call it, then you may do the balancing that we talked about. You should have the balancing, right? Imam Razi says decrease one's needs or wants so that the amount of wealth that would be needed to satisfy a high level of needs would decline. And then you reflect deeply over the teaching of Islam. Remind yourself over and over again the negative image carried by misery. Enlighten and recommit oneself to the true position of wealth. Remind oneself that overindulgence in wealth can cause nil on perpetual virtues. Realize that man must be master over his wealth, not vice versa. You make sure that because when you start earning, you are the master and your wealth is your slave. But over the time, when you start earning and you keep money, a lot of money, then one day the wealth become your masters and you become the slave for your wealth. Lots and lots of people nowadays they are the billionaires, the trillionaires, but the problem with them, they spend the entire time how to safeguard, how to keep safe, where to keep it. Is it a Swiss bank or the local bank? Is it some mafia or is it some businessman? See, where to put the money, how to keep the money, how to bring it money. So the money is becoming their boss. So he talks about all these things. Be aware that miserliness can cause irresponsible utilization of hoarded wealth of one's death. Realize that universal norms are opposed to miserliness. So this is amazing. This is amazing topic as well to talk about this. When you talk about the stinginess, people are stingy and then they start hoarding the wealth. They start keeping the wealth. But the universe is against. Have you seen the universe is lack of resources after 7 billion people are eating every single day? Is it only 7 billion people are eating? What about the animals? What about the sea animals? What about the jungle, forest animals, and then the birds? Everything that we see, all the living things, right? So the universe is, the universal norms are opposed to miserliness. The relationship between the insatiable demand for wealth and relative marginal utility and worldly positions. Here he talk about you can actually the one you can actually possess worldly positions to possess wealth. But if you possess wealth, it's not going to, not necessarily it has to give you the worldly positions. So he talks about collecting, hoarding the wealth, and also becoming someone in the world, become some position. Not necessarily that a good leader, right? A good administrator, a good prime minister, a good president, a good khalifa. Not necessarily he should be the richest person of the world, right? Maybe someone is a billionaire, someone is a trillionaire, someone has a filthy rich person. Not necessarily he has to become the world leader, right? So you see the differences. He talks about these kind of differences, and then practical exposition dealing with the parsimonious or hoarding inclination. He again gives 5 suggestions to undertake, the practical steps to help one's heart and mind away from excessive pleasure seeking tendencies. How do you make yourself away? Because you see, because this makhluk of insan, the creation of insan, of course, when Allah talks, when Imam al-Ghazali talks about the nature of the creation, he talks about that there are 5 elements that in our body, and one of the element is actually water. We have water, we have soil, which is a clay. We have clay. We made of clay. We are made of fire. We are, made of water. So on, so on. The 5 elements. When Imam Ghazali talks about it in Ihya Ulumuddin, and then he say that the reason that we love so many things, the reason that whatever we see, something that becoming attractive, something that we become attractive to it, the reason because we are created by the water. And what is the nature of the water? The water always spread. You don't see unless you keep it in a container. If you put too much water, the water comes out from the container, right? Look at the ocean, look at the river. The river always run, it won't stop. If there's a lake, the lake always expands, right? So that is the characteristic of water, and that characteristic is already in our body, and because of that, everything becomes so attractive to us. So here he talks about how do you stop. Imam Razi talks about how do you stop the tendencies, he call it. Keep oneself in the company of the needy. Make sure that you spend most of your day with someone who is poorer than you. So this is amazing idea, but most of us doing the opposite. Look at us. We would like to spend our days and our time always with someone who is richer than us, because we think that, okay, maybe if I stay with him, one day I also will become like him, or maybe will become better than him, right? And we also think that if I stay with that kind of person, then I might get some benefits. Maybe he gives me as free food, free ride, right? But that is actually what's happening, and that is actually a huge mistake that we are doing. Keep oneself in the company of the needy. So when someone is a needy, you are there, and then you will be seeing him as an example, and you will be trying to helping him. One is you will be trying to help him. The other one is you always will be shukur, you show your gratitude to Allah. You will be the shakirin, because Allah has given you everything that you need, and there are some less fortunate people around. They don't have everything what they need. Indulge in spending of wealth, but in generosity, not in self-interest. Undertake actions against the inclination to hoard. Whatever the hoarding, do the opposite. Right? There is another amazing thing I will tell you after this. Build a healthy and commendable reputation. Undertake to be consistently reminded by others. So that's why most of the time, we saw our friends, our teachers, or sometimes our parents always say, consistently reminding, don't do that, don't be like this, don't spend too much, don't do this kind of thing. So we most of the time we feel like it's a kind of annoying, right? But it is not actually. It's kind of help, guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He makes you listen to that, so that one day that we might bring these kind of changes in our life. Okay. All right. Policy prescription for a basic strategy on poverty eradication. Because here he talks about what exactly is the poverty, the real poverty. Like like Imam al-Ghazali also talks about the poverty. He says that if you are a rich in material world, and you are poor in spiritual world, then you became the poorest. The same thing he talks about, Imam Razi as well. He says that he says that it is not only through the physical deficiencies. Problem of the poverty should not be reflected only through the physical deficiencies, but also the mental, psychological, spiritual deficiencies. This is what his take on this. In order to achieve this, the policy makers and policy implementers must view and feel as the target group feel. All right. Here he talks about, number 9, wealth between the necessity to spend and the necessity to keep. How much exactly you should keep? How much exactly you should spend? So this is always, sometimes confusing. Can I keep some wealth for next month? Can I just spend everything on the same day? Let's say I got 1,000 ringgit today, I spend it. What about tomorrow? I believe in Allah. I had a tawakkul, yaqeen, that Allah will give me more tomorrow. So today I have it, I spend it. Is it correct? Or I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, or I don't know what's going to happen next month or next year or next 10 year or 20 year or 30 years. I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm going to keep that money. I'm going to start keeping it, put it in the bank account. So the right balancing is always questionable in this case. How much should I keep it? How much should I spend it? So amazingly, Imam Fakhruddin Razi, when he is talking about the tafsir of this Quranic verse, this is chapter number 25, verse number 67, and those who, when they spend, are neither extravagant nor niggardly, but keep the golden mean. Golden mean is actually wasat, the middle path. Extravagant, the meaning of extravagant, spending too much. Niggardly is actually the meaning of miserliness, which is a stinginess. He says that what exactly stinginess? Stinginess is if wealth is kept when is necessary to spend it. If you keep the money and there is a situation comes to you that you must spend it, but you are not spending it, this is called stinginess. You got the point? You have money and there is a need, and you are afraid to open your wallet. There is a need. I'm not saying want. It's not about want. There is a need. That's why we call necessary to spend it. There is a need of eating because you should have your lunch. You have the money with you, but you are not opening your wallet. This is called stinginess. All right. This is called bakhil. Bukhul, we call it. Bukhul, bakhil. What about the extravagance? What is israf actually? What exactly? If the wealth is spent, you are spending the money, but when it is necessary to keep it. You are spending that money, but it is actually necessary to keep it. Because why? For example, you are spending, you already had your lunch, and then you are spending for another lunch. Because that another lunch that you are spending, that is the necessary to keep it for the next day. You got my point? The same thing you go, now I'm talking about food. You are not supposed to spend for the second lunch when you had the lunch. So the second lunch will be extravagance. When you have the shoe with you and you are using it, it is very good. Perhaps you might need more than one, maybe because of the different occasion. I'm not stopping, I'm not actually blaming it. For example, you need a shoe for the office, you need the shoe for the sports, you need the shoe for certain activities. Yeah, this is all correct, because there is a need for certain activities. You cannot keep the same shoe for every single activities. But here we talk about uh, you already have one and you want to buy the similar one again, which is actually you should keep that money for the necessary thing, but you are spending it. It is called extravagance. That's why moderated expenditure, the middle way, the balancing is all about. Okay. The factors that can influence wealth expenditure analysis. He also talks about some sort of analysis of wealth expenditures, Islamically speaking. He says, in order to avoid a generalization of conclusion, there are few things that you should ask yourself. Who is the critic of a certain spending of wealth, from the wealthy or the poor? Who are the beneficiaries from the wealth spent? The one you are spending, who are the beneficiaries? What are the items of expenditures? Are they necessities such as food or otherwise? During which time period of wealth, during which time period was the wealth spent in? And what were the circumstances on that time? So these are the questions that if you ask yourself every time you spend, that is analysis of wealth expenditure. Then what is the types of need? He talks about corporeal, which is actually your body needed. Because if you don't do that, your livelihood can be fatally jeopardized. And the other one is a spiritual need. For the spiritual need also, you need to have a food, drink, clothing, and everything. In fact, you are going to the masjid for your spiritual need. You are coming and seeing your guru, your teachers for spiritual need. You also need a proper dress, proper food. You cannot come and you cannot go to the masjid without eating anything, because you go to the masjid, you won't be listening what they are saying, or you won't be able to do worshipping. So here he is trying to make a very nice point. He says that this effort in searching will need more and better food, drink, clothing, and other materials when it is about spiritual. When it is about, for example, you are knowledge seeker, make sure that you have a very good dress. You are the knowledge seeker, make sure that you don't come to class without eating. In fact, I also tell in the classroom, if you have to eat in the classroom, just eat and drink, it doesn't matter. Don't think that it is against of adab, uh, against of moral. No, it's not like that, because you should be making yourself completely available, and it is more needed than the corporeal. So this is, I think, what Imam Fakhruddin Razi talks about. Alhamdulillah, I think we learn a lot. I want you to go through the slides again and again and again, so that you will be getting more informations and knowledge from these slides.